Hang on, we're moving. This podcast. 11, not 12, not 10, but 11. 1, 11, 1, 11, 1, 11, 1, 11, 1, 11, 1, 11.
I might not use all of that.
No, I say we definitely use all of that.
Still going.
It's an out of control machine.
It's a fade out.
Oh,
That was brilliant.
Don't use all of that because we're going to sell that.
That was marvellous. Welcome to podcast number 11. I think I stated it a few times before.
Yeah, I might chop that off.
Before chaos ensued. But I like chaos. Let's introduce him.
Hi, Ted.
Good morning.
Evening. Nice to meet you.
It's morning somewhere.
So Ted has come with a lot of beer. Talk us through the beers he brought.
Ooh, that's how long have you got?
About an hour and a half.
Well, the real the prelude to this was that I had a discount coupon that had to be used before Sunday.
I'm just moving the mic closer to you.
And so, yeah, I had to go. It was a 1 round sort of discount on 1 round at Brewdog.
Oh, that's a good place to have a discount.
Yeah, and so you have to make the most of it. So
that's fine.
So yeah, we've got every beer in every form. Not necessarily for use tonight, but for use at some point in the not too distant future. So.
They don't pay us, so it's fine. So what you brought? Clockwork Tangerine.
Yeah, I got the Clockwork. I got 2 growlers, which is meant to be, as I understand it, that a growler is meant to be a way that you can take home a bit of keg beer.
Aye.
Yeah.
But,
it's not the growler you're thinking of, Carl.
No. Well. Yeah, no, that's right. I instantly first call is I've got 2 growler bases.
Oh, growler bases.
Yeah. So it's not the growler you were thinking of. But no, growler is a receptacle.
Well, yeah, and in some places, like I'm proudly sporting a Beavertown growler that I got from the Beavertown Brewery,
which is in London somewhere, isn't it?
And Tottenham Hale, yeah. And,
there we go. We can hear you now. We're just turning you up.
Okay, yeah. And I've got a Sierra Nevada growler, which I got from California.
Where you've also been, haven't you? To the actual place.
Yes, yeah. And in those places, and in some places, they've kind of got a thing that they fill them in, so it takes the CO2. I'm talking about something that I don't know about.
That's good. That's what we do here.
I think it's there's something where they can put the beer in the growler and sort of preserve it from the oxygen or something. There's a way that they can fill it at pressure. It's sort of so you can take it home and have what should be kind of keg beer for a couple of days after or something. Or it's really, they're only like 3 pints, so it's really meant to be opened and used in one sitting or something.
Yeah, but one of those is 10%.
Well, one of these ones that I brought. But it's not necessarily something you do all on your own.
You mentioned Sierra Nevada. It's one of my favourites. They did one when I was in bloody Australia. They had one called Southern Hemisphere.
Right, yeah, the hops.
Man, I've never found it since, and I'd love to. If you know where to get some.
When I was, because I went to school, I went to uni, as you would say, in Chico, and so that's where Sierra Nevada is from.
So it's just California.
Yeah, in northern California, in the sort of almond orchards. There's a little reasonable sized university out there, and that's where Sierra Nevada is. And so we used to, when I was there, which was a reasonable amount of time ago. I think Sierra Nevada started in like the mid to late 80s, and I started university in 97. And so it was still kind of like the craft, even over there, it was like the craft beer thing wasn't anywhere near what it was now.
Oh, that's mad now, isn't it?
But they're kind of that pale ale is kind of the flagship brew of that whole thing.
Green bottle.
And there
That's
used
the green
to be,
one, yeah.
I think it was 3 or 4 kind of standard brews they had. They had the pale ale, the porter, which was like a blue one, I think, and a stout, sort of like, you know, it's like there was like 3 or 4 main beers, and then maybe 3 or 4 other ones kind of thing. But now it's like, when I went in there this time, there's like 20 different kinds you can get. And
Did you bring it back with you? Can you?
Well, I brought the jar back. It
Yeah.
wasn't full of beer at the time, but when I went over there, I went back last October. Well, a year ago, October. It must have been October 2017 to do which was a brilliant thing that I was able to do, which is to go. I went back to my old university as a kind of a guest artist.
That's
Sort
cool,
of thing.
isn't it?
And
Talk about acceptance.
yeah, well, I'm still very fortunately in touch with the amazing musician who's the head of jazz there and does all the stuff, and he invited me and a friend of mine who we all went to school together, kind of thing, and well, not Rock. So Rocky Winslow's the head of the program there. And he actually came in as I was leaving, which was really unfortunate for me as a student. But I still kind of to this day, like even the 1 year that we overlapped there was what, you know, I've learned more about not just jazz, but just music than, you know, it was a really kind of concentrated period of time. And there's another friend who's a little bit, just a couple of years older than me as a student, but was around at the same time, a sax player called Mike Newman, and he's really responsible for kind of getting me, I'll say, back into jazz, because I did sort of work and play and study some jazz stuff when I was younger, like 13 in high school, but I kind of went away from it.
Is that because they made you, or because you were
No, it's actually the opposite. It was like I grew up as a young teenager into my sort of high school years in a place called Redding, California, which is about sort of 3 or 4 hours north, 3 or 4 hour drive north of San Francisco. So if you go to San Francisco Airport, you're looking at a 3-4 hour drive up the state. And my parents migrated there when I was a young teenager. I might have been 12. Or 12, 13, something like that. But it was the whole kind of thing why people move out of London, to be able to actually, like normal people with normal incomes, to be able to kind of buy a house and raise a family, and so they moved to Northern California, and that's where my brother and I really kind of grew up. I mean, we do have fond memories of being in the Bay Area. And that's still a big family connection for us. There's still lots of family around there, and we still have a big identity there as sort of... when I'm over here in England, I say San Francisco because that's what people know. And both my parents were born in San Francisco, and the family origins are very much in San Francisco, but they kind of live in San Jose and different kind of the Bay Area, as they call it.
Bay Area, that's it.
But we grew up in the north, and in Reading, where I was going to high school as a 13-year-old. That's your first year in high school over there, and they had a Dixieland Jazz Festival every year that was quite a popular thing, and you could go out of school for like basically a week, and I still look back on this as like
cut off school for music.
To go do, because these guys who came, the festival was like over like a long weekend. It was probably like a Wednesday or Thursday through a Sunday, or kind of, and you could go to these little education camps and kind of get involved. And at the time, and I was already playing. My dad's a drummer, so I've been playing drums a long time at that point. And
I was just about to say, we haven't even mentioned that Ted's,
Ted's
a drummer.
We started talking about beer. That's
I just started about beer, and but I just wanted to put everyone into context. You know what I mean? You're talking about jazz, but it's essentially drums that you do, isn't it?
I guess I assumed when we started the conversation with beer, people would have thought, oh yeah, drummer.
There's a connection there.
Yeah, so
sorry, I butted in then. You carry on.
Anyway, like my dad was a drummer, and a family of musicians, so I've been around and playing music a long time. So when I was 13 or 14 in high school, I could kind of play pretty well, I guess, and so it was like you kind of were able to get invited to go to these little camps and stuff, and we loved it, but it was this Dixieland jazz and stuff, which has an amazing, it's got all the kind of it's an amazing thing, and I have very fond memories of it. But
good. I like that.
Now being a professional musician, it would probably kind of fill me with dread having to do a gig of that, because it is a little bit
hard work.
Well, it's not hard work, but it's there's something about it. It's like the spirit of it is the whole thing behind it. It's like, I think you guys would kind of call it trad jazz over here. It's a similar thing. It's like an old school thing, and it's like, and I think in some ways, like when you're really, really involved in it in the right situation, it's a really amazing thing. It's so spirited and happy and positive, and it's just a great atmosphere. But I think in some ways, some of the people that play it don't have that sort of. So it's like, if you don't have that, it's sort of, if you just go to like a function that you're playing that kind of stuff, it's a little bit of a drain. But actually, if you that could be said for any style of music. If you go to a function and you're just churning out Stevie Wonder songs, there's not really much fun about that. But you have both sides, isn't it? Sometimes you're in those situations where it feels like a slog, and sometimes you're like, we're playing Superstition for the 50,000th time, and it's brilliant because it's a brilliant song, and
because it's the only Stevie Wonder song everyone bloody knows. He's got so many better ones and all that.
So anyway, so I went off from school with some friends of mine who were older, sort of, trumpet players and things, and they were like, there's this jazz camp we can go to for a couple of days. We spent the days, and there was these professional musicians who toured around different cities putting on these festivals, and that was like my first real experience of playing jazz, and I loved it because it was like everything that musicians love about playing jazz. It's a freedom, it's a spirited thing, and you can solo as a drummer. It's like you can solo in every song. And when you're a 13-year-old drummer, that's really what you want to do, and so that was like my real start of learning about what jazz was all about, in terms of like playing a tune and then soloing over the changes as it were, and that kind of the structure of having a tune, but then the freedom of whatever could happen after that.
That's huge. That's lucky, I think, because I think your standard musician that probably doesn't find jazz till later on in their lives when they grow up a bit, maybe, or was that a bit of a stereotype?
I think it's seen like as advanced music, isn't it?
Yeah, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't.
I think it could be presented and definitely in the wrong way, and some people are really afraid of it, and that's fair enough, because I think some people, even musicians or non-musicians, some people are less sort of just likely to want to get into something creative and random, and but at the same time, some people like might want to do that, but if they've been so sort of kind of trained in a certain way that it's like it doesn't suit, and then the older you get, that becomes more, so like anything you learn at a young age is better, isn't it? Because you just take it on board and that, and so I guess I was lucky, but after that I did that for probably every year when I was in high school, so 13, 14, well, where was I? Started high school at 13, and or was it 14? It's probably more like 14 something, 14 to 18. That's what high school is. And we did it every year. And then we actually got, because there was a good little group of musicians that we had there. And we actually got invited to go as students, as sort of like almost like kind of like student ambassadors or something, you know, like advanced students, to go into another jazz festival down south, Southern California, which was like
that's a long way, isn't it?
You know, like and do that. So we kind of we'd always experienced our hometown festival, which was great because you could go like you go around and see all these different bands and brilliant musicians, you know, great. I saw so many amazing drummers that nobody's ever heard of, but they're just really sort of, you know, just incredibly sort of spirited, awesome players and singers and sax players. And there was actually even within that genre, there was such a mix of like, some of the bands were more like New Orleans-y, kind of Cajun-y vibe, and some of them were more just like really kind of really strict Dixieland-y, and some of them were a little bit bluesy, and it was like you could, even within that like seemingly small genre, you could get a lot of variety. And I you know, treasure those musical memories, and it taught me so much just being able to see all that. It's like in America, really, like it can be hard to see live music as a young person, because you can't go to a bar until you're 21.
That's it.
You know, and so that's the kind of go-to, and that's not to say that there's no opportunities, but it's, you know, unless your little area or something has a specific, like either outdoor concert series or something like that, it's like the go-to thing where all the local bands play is in the bar, and you know, and it's like you're not doing that until, you know, till way later. So this was a really great opportunity to be able to experience a lot of just different music and different playing and players and stuff. That's kind of one of the things that I remember when I look back now, is I don't necessarily remember the names, but I remember seeing different piano players and being like really intrigued about how that guy was like, they're both amazing, but this guy was different, and one guy plays really fast and sharp, and another guy has this kind of textural thing. And same thing with drummers and sax players and trombone players and people who would it always just really impressed me to see somebody like, say, playing this incredible like trombone melody line or something, and then take it away and then sing a chorus of something, and it's, you know, this kind of versatility of, and it was just all about the spirit of the kind of the tune, you know. So yeah, that was an amazing musical kind of thing, and I'd already come from a, you know, a pretty rich musical background. My dad and mom really listened to a lot of stuff. We had a lot of different things going on in the house, in the car, you know. It's like we always sort of say now about that, like there was a period of time when the two tapes
here we go.
This is what in the
this
car.
This was the last podcast we did. We had I can't remember what she listened to. Some crazy.
Oh, Hannah, some Carmen Sandiego is what she.
Yeah.
Billy Joel.
That's it. And that's it. And I had ABBA and Status Quo.
Well,
just about to find out what you had. Come on.
We had we had Toto 4.
Oh, that's a good album. Yeah.
Magic.
And the Nightfly, which was
well, no wonder you turned up being a drummer.
And so and then later on, when we first got a CD player, it was a sort of similar thing, where it's like the first couple CDs we had were like, which I think an American, the Beatles for Sale.
We didn't have that here. Yeah,
it was an American issue, and then also Help we had, but then also it's like, strangely enough, like tying back into this sort of jazz thing, was the my dad had this. I don't know why he had it, or what it might, like, I still think now it may well have come free with the CD player, but it was a GRP thing, you know what that is, the Grusin Rosin Productions, Dave Grusin.
Okay.
And it's like a GRP big, it's like a huge like label kind of thing in the States, and it's like that kind of like 80s jazz fusion, but they did a lot of pop. It is like a big thing, but it was like a GRP thing of the Glenn Miller Orchestra.
Oh, yeah, right.
But it was like, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, because it was like, I reckon it was like if I looked back at this, I reckon it was like the GRP big band, which was like people like Dave Weckl and you know, brilliant playing like verbatim, like note for note, solo for solo, the old Glenn Miller stuff.
Wow.
So it was like this digital,
like a remastering.
Like it was 4. That's why it's sort of why I think it may have like it was like 4 CD like digital music. Like they did this amazing recording where everything is flipping, because all that old Glenn Miller stuff sounds like it's recorded over a telephone.
My
right?
my granddad loved
Glenn
Miller.
So they've done this thing where it's like all that In the Mood and Tuxedo Junction and all that, but just recorded like
instead of remastering it, they just remade it.
They remade it, and every, like I said, every solo was pretty much, and that was like. And then when you had the CD player, you could like turn it right up, and it was just crystal clear. Yeah. But yeah, it's not something my dad would buy, I don't think. But yeah, so we had those few Beatles CDs, and so those were another ones that just got wrapped around and around and around, and like I reckon me and my brother know every single word to every single, and it's like every little drum hit down to the little, you know, sort of
ingrained.
So that was.
So what was on Beatles for Sale? Which era was that then?
8 days a week.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that was, you know, I'll follow the sun.
Oh,
that was one, you know, is that kind of era, like
early stuff.
is it like kind of pre Revolver?
Oh, definitely pre-Revolver, yeah, because that's when it got weird. And
kind
Revolver.
of like not. I mean, it was starting to get
pre-Rubber Soul.
I reckon, like,
Yeah,
but just probably,
Yeah.
you know, it's like kind of. I think, you know, thinking about it, because those songs were getting a little more sophisticated, but they were still pretty kind of teeny bopper pop songs, I think.
What do you guys say? I'm just going to randomly change the subject slightly. But like, I've got a friend who says you're Beatles or Stones. What do you say to that?
100% Beatles.
I know you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my dad's 100% Beatles. And I know another guy who doesn't like the Beatles and loves the Stones.
Yeah, I don't know
if it's a thing that needs to be debated at all, but I'm just
I mean, the older that I get, in the especially as a musician, I think the less I want to deal with any kind of competition.
No, it's a cop out. That's called a cop out.
I mean, but that being said, it's like there's a lot of Rolling Stones songs that I really, really love. And I mean, I guess if I had to choose a side, I would probably just about choose the Beatles. But why would I ever,
why? Yeah, why?
Is this like, you know,
it's a needless question.
Is this a desert island disc kind of thing? You know?
You're going to die in 7.5 minutes. Choose about. No.
But I don't know. I mean, the Stones but the Beatles
was it? It's probably
the Stones write their first tunes and stuff, right? You know, so.
Yeah. We weren't of an age back when it was happening, and maybe something was going on where they were both. I don't know if it was like a bloody Oasis and Blur rivalry. That's probably more our era, but
I think a lot of that comes more from a publicity point of view.
The media,
like, they're all mates,
right? Stuff,
the media stinks that up, don't they?
That's like Tupac and Biggie, right? It's the same thing. Right?
That's it, Brittany and Christina.
Well, there you go. You know, so you have to have that. It's an industry must, I think.
Pepsi, Coca-Cola. That's the big one.
Well, say Pepsi and Shirley.
Pepsi. Oh dear.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that's an amazing. That's amazing introduction to music at such a young age.
I mean, I think I was lucky looking back on it, and I actually like now when I'm sort of doing my thing, as it were, I kind of like the different, and I have to say, like, over the years I've learned so much from my students, just you know, across the board. But like when I sort of get involved with different students and stuff, it's sort of sometimes kind of like I realize how lucky I was to kind of have the different amount of music that I listened to over the years, you know, and like a lot of that started off with my dad, and then it's really like such like, even like it's like an environmental kind of thing, and it's like even when I look back on the stuff that I liked from my parents and that, and then as I started to drift off on my own, like I reckon my first favorite, well, this was like influence from my slightly older cousins, was they started like giving me Bon Jovi tapes, right? You know, and that was like, and I still think like
New Jersey.
I mean, for me, one of the greatest tunes of all time is Runaway.
Oh yeah,
which is the first. Is it the
That's
first
the first,
track off the first album?
That's that first single.
Yeah, and man, what an 80s pop tune.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, and then I kind of got into kind of Guns N' Roses from there, like through a friend, you know, across the street or something, and it's just that. Like, and then it's like, and then I kind of like, you know, I just, you know, sort of drifted it, and then later on got into like some of the hip hop and all that stuff, and it's just like, and every time I listen back, even now, to the stuff that I was really into at one point, it's like, man, it all grooves. That was like, obviously from an early thing, that was like something that spoke to me, was just the groove, like the hip hop that I used to listen to, I still do listen to sometimes, and is just, you know, Dre, those early Dre beats, and it just grooves its ass off, you know, and it's just like, that's what I love, that's what draws me to it, you know.
It was definitely harder to find, not harder, but it was different finding music back then. No, I'm not going to do this whole thing. Nowadays it's easy, and it's,
it's overwhelming.
Back then it was, what someone gave you was like, oh, thanks, mate, you know, and you actually genuinely had a listen, and it was,
or if you bought something,
that's it.
You spent and that's what you had for, you know, and it's like, it's overwhelming now. It's like, even when I like open Spotify and I'm like, I'd like to like check out something different. It's like, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. I can check out anything.
You know, it's like,
you're right. You are right. Overwhelming.
Even before this Spotify thing, somebody, you know, it's like, somebody gave me, and this isn't an exaggeration, like, somebody gave me an entire hard drive full, and this was like maybe 10 years ago, so it was probably like a 20 gigabyte hard drive, let's say, you know, like, full of,
that's a lot of music
McCoy Tyner, just McCoy Tyner.
Wow, okay.
Oh wow, just,
you know, and I was just like, I just remember thinking, like, I remember being so excited to get it from him, and then when I was like, I opened it all up, I was just like, I just don't know what to, and I ended up listening to the real McCoy, which I listened to 1 billion times before, you know, and it's like, and I loved it, you know, but it was just like, you just can't get started, you know, like, how can you? And that's, even today, it's like when people recommend things to listen to, and you see people doing it on social media, don't you, where he's like, I need something to listen to, give me some suggestions.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and then even then, it's like they flood in like a stream of.
This is why curated playlists do so well, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why they're so important, because there's like, otherwise you just have a chance.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the new thing to, like, if you're putting music out, to get your
to be on a playlist,
on something.
Yeah,
like
you
that,
pay to be on playlists. Well, no, you pay to be reviewed and then given the chance to be on a playlist.
Yeah, and it's but that's great, because if that's how people are going to get to you, you know, that's the new A&R, I guess, or whatever, you know.
Is there still room for working hard and gigging your ass off?
Well, there's always room for that, I think, because I think that's actually, like, perhaps, like, it's always been a bit of an industry standard. It's like even, well, you know, I'm involved in some original stuff, and really you see, whether I'm a sideman on somebody else's original project, or whether it's our Baker Brothers thing that we do, it's you know, the most CDs we've sold have been on gigs, and really probably, as you boil it down, the most money we've made is on gigs, and certainly the most fun that we've had is you know, that's really always, hopefully, knock on wood, always going to be the way, because that's a great thing, but it's still becoming harder, isn't it, to get gigs, and
especially with venues closing.
Yeah, well, that and just everybody wants a you know, to be starting out is just, and you can feel that at any time in your career. You could have a reasonably established thing, and then start a new band, and then you've got to start out again, and you've got to promote your band by saying, well, this is my new thing, but I've done this. I've played with this guy, and the reason you should like this is not for its actual content, but because I've played with this person, or the bass players played with this person, and but that's how we do it.
So it's tricky. I remember chatting to a guy in Melbourne now, the guy who used to sing in Barefoot Sundays, and he did he was doing a degree in Melbourne, and he had some pretty big players in Melbourne, like the guys from the Cat Empire. They're a great band over there. They did a talk, and they talked about quarters. Everything, all these stars were talking about quarters. You've got to release something quarterly, they were saying. You've got to keep in the public eye, whether it's a single, whatever it is, a new YouTube video. You've got to have these big quarterly hits to just keep people remembering you, keep reminding people that you exist. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of work, but it's fun. That's always fun.
It is fun, but it is a lot of work, like you say. When you come down to the behind the scenes of just like getting a YouTube video, and it's like, man, it takes a lot of work. And then when you start scrutinizing over something in the way that it looks, the way that it sounds, it's like that could be a full-time job in itself.
Exactly.
But there is a lot, in today's world, I think, where everything's so flashing by, you do have to, you can be forgotten about, and so it's a tough whole thing.
It's saturated, isn't it? There's so much. Some of the bands, I love it. Aidan, you said people send you music and stuff like that. Aidan's brilliant for sending me songs that he thinks I'm going to like. Yeah. And then I go off on a wormhole and listen to it. And then, like Barrett recently turned me on to Baroness. Yeah. Brilliant. And then I'm listening to all these other bands which sound like them, which I've never heard of before. And I'm like, are these modern bands or are they from the 70s?
Yeah, well,
I can't tell. It's amazing, but it's a lovely thing. But yeah, so I think kudos to Aidan. He's actually found me some of my favourite bands. It's nice when someone knows what you like to listen to. Thank you, brother.
That's right. Because I like them too.
Sorry. But it's amazing. So drums. Why? I ask this to every person who comes.
Only drummers.
Why? No. Just why did you choose? No. How did it happen? Was it just access, or did you just had an inclination?
It was kind of. I've said already, my dad was a drummer, and when I was actually. So we're getting kind of going forward and backwards here. I was actually born in Boise, Idaho, which is...
Where's that? It's in America, I know that. But.
Yeah. So you've got California, and then above it is like Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
And then next to that, going east, is
inland
Idaho.
Oh, so it's at the top, near Canada.
It's at Idaho's kind of a weird one, where it's like sort of shaped like a weird L. So like the bit that borders Canada is this thin little thing, and then it comes down and becomes like a bigger sort of.
What's the big city of Idaho?
Boise.
Oh, it is.
That's
right.
Yeah, and so as I understand it, and I think sometimes my over the years you get little bits of information, and if my mom and dad listen to this, they'll be cracking up about this. It's like, it's hard to kind of work out what was happening before, the late 70s. But my dad was always a musician, but not really like what I do is and like what we probably all do is kind of like a freelance thing. You do a lot of different gigs, different projects. You've got some of your band stuff that you do that's like a slightly more exclusive in terms of members, but then you do functions with this person and things with that person, and you do a pub gig over here, and it's like kind of in some ways like whatever comes in, whatever work comes in,
wherever the money is,
you go for it, and that's it. And so you've got a pool of different musicians that you play with. Sometimes you end up on gigs with people you don't even know. That doesn't happen to me that often, but it has happened before. But my dad never was like that. As I understand it, he was always just like in a band. He would so he had a sort of pretty successful group that they had in San Jose in the sort of 60s and they recorded on Capitol Records RCA and did some stuff and sort of just about there's quite a bit of stuff on the Spotify now, and it's that kind of old school. They were all really influenced by the Beatles and that kind of stuff, but some kind of that kind of 60s rock kind of thing, and anyway, they had some good stuff, some great stuff, and just had some success with that. And then when that all fizzled out, he moved. My parents moved. He got a gig with some band in somewhere like Ohio or something, and they moved out there, and he played 5 nights a week with a band in Ohio for a year or two, and then off that they moved to Tennessee for a little while, and then they moved over to, and it was but this was all him joining a band that had a gig, and it kind of seems like they kind of did this thing where they played 5 nights a week, and they did kind of covers, almost like what we would probably call a kind of function thing, but then they had originals too. They slipped them in every once in a while. They were trying to kind of, and then so he would go on these little stints, and I think that Idaho might have been sort of part of that. There was a little bit of a family connection too, but he was they were kind of traveling around, and they anyway they converged somehow in Idaho. And when my brother and I were born, or sort of when we were little, my parents owned a nightclub there, and my dad was in the band. The band was called Gentle Ben. The nightclub was called Gentle Ben, and they were a kind of a country rock thing. They played there 5 or 6 nights a week, and they were a shit hot smoking group. There's some tapes kicking. I used to I spent a big part of my drumming childhood playing along to these tapes,
cool.
And
playing on your own dad's stuff.
Well, that is
cool. That is cool.
And it was a really a couple of years of really successful sort of vibrant thing, and my mom was managed the club, and they all owned a stake in it, and the band played all the time, and it was a massive place. It was 600 people or something could be in there. So it was and I was there, but I don't really have a recollection. I can't now picture what it was like inside the club or anything, but we went there every day, and because when it was shut, and the band would practice during the day for a couple of hours, and my mom would come and do the books and settle up, and we would go. We were preschool, we weren't in school or anything, and we would kind of go there and just hang out and do shit, and the club was shut, and then it was they'd take us home and put us to bed, babysitter, and then they would go out and work and come home at 3 a.m, shut at 2, come home at 3 a.m, and then we'd probably wake up at 7 or something. So that was kind of probably the start of it, because we would go to this club most days or some days, and it was all the gear was set up there. There's dad's drums, everything, and so it was you love to go up there and mess around with everything and do that. And one of the things that I do remember, which is this mic stand that my dad still has, which is this really impressive, and I wish that I had it now, because it's for my little studio thing that I've got going, it would just be so perfect. But it was this a lead based, these mic stands you get now, which are these black ones that are they barely hold up anything, it's but this thing was because he had as a drummer, you have to have the mic stand kind of extended up and then coming back down, so that you can still, and so he had this amazing, the pole was probably about 1 inch thick, and this lead bass, and it was heavier. It was as heavy as the trap case.
It would hold Superman down.
So it was but it was a really it was a triangular thing with a really characteristic kind of I just remember it all, and it was always cigarette ashes on there, because you could smoke in there, and he would just smoke and play, and that's the one little picture that I can remember from the club, is being up there and playing the drums, and and then so I would do that, and then he had an old drum kit, and he took it out of the closet and sawed all the he hacksawed all the stands down, and we're talking like, I still have this kit, and this is like a vintage, like, well, we say now, like vintage wasn't really a word then. I don't think, you know, like, well, it was a word, of course, but not in terms of like relating to a drum set or a guitar or something. But it was like this, you know, it's like this 60s Ludwig drum kit, amazing
just
drum
took a
kit.
sword
He fucking hacked the shit out of it. Like, luckily, like the drums themselves, like didn't do, but all of the legs and all the stands, and he sawed them down so I could sit on them and play them as a 3-year-old, and I just like and set them up in the garage, and I used to just go out there for hours a day and just beat the piss out of them.
You still got it, did you say?
Yeah, that's like my drum set that I still use, and it's
really short.
No, so
it's been unmodified recently.
Yeah, over the years, I've had to like replace the tom legs, and I've had to get like an actual normal snare stand. And, you know, so it was. He didn't actually do anything. Thankfully, he didn't actually do anything to the actual drums. Like I did deface them a little bit when I was a young teenager because I was like had these ideas, but they're still reasonably intact, and now actually worth a fair amount of money, and an amazing instrument they are, and so they stay down in my little studio, and I take them out if I have a session somewhere or something that's cool. Something, you know, it's I don't take them out on gigs.
Something a bit special.
Well, there was a few when I first moved here. I took them out everywhere all the time, and my dad was always just like, "Well, they're just drums, you know. You just they sat in our garage for 20 years, you know. It's like nobody took care of them then." But I used to take them everywhere, and then I did start to think like, "Oh, this isn't probably sensible as much." And so I invested in a cheap kit, like a workhorse kit, and this was like 2 years went by where I wasn't taking it out, and I had a session or something, so I had them in the car and out and about, and then I had a wedding the next night, and I thought, well, as they're already here, take them out, you know. And it's like, and it was that wedding where it was like we were playing. It was like there was no stage. It was just in like a little, and some just drunk fucking cocksucker basically like
we've all got these stories,
fell over, took out an entire speaker stand, and like I didn't get the worst of it, but it's like it kind of sideswiped the drums and took out like the guitarist's like whole rig kind of thing, and it was just like, and this guy just was like dancing around and just lost his balance and grabbed this thing, and it was just like, and it was just one of those things where I really lucked out, but it was one of those things where it's like this was the right decision not to be,
man,
you know, because if you got a little sort of, you know, 500 quid drum kit that gets smashed by some drunk prick, then it doesn't really matter, you know.
But a family heirloom.
Well, that's exactly what it is. And
I remember first decent pedal board I bought. First night out. This is years and years ago. Yeah, no, probably even before that. To be honest. But and I took it out, and I was like, and I was just starting out, and I was like, and I've spent like whatever 800 quid on this bloody thing, and put it down. It's lovely, and it's got all the sounds in it. And the first song, some drunk guy pours a whole pint on it, and I was just like, brilliant.
Well, it's those gig stories are like one. I've got a great guitarist friend who's his name is Jeff Lye. He's an old Southamptoner, and he plays guitar in the Baker Brothers and stuff, and we've done tons of stuff together over the years, functions and all kinds of like really grim gigs and really cool gigs.
Love it.
And one time it was just like at a function, and we get to this function, and he's got his mic stand. He's a great singer and guitarist, and he's got his mic stand set up to the side and down like that, whereas like normally it would have just been like straight up, you know, and he's like kind of got it off to the left and really utilizing the boom, you know. I was kind of like, you know, not fully extended, but you know, it's like, why have you done that? And, you know, it looks a bit weird, you know. And I was like, he's like, have you seen that YouTube video? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, have you seen the YouTube video?
I've seen it. I
know what it is. Yeah, so there's like a YouTube video where like a guy's singing, and some big fat dancing lady bumps into the microphone and just it jams it right into the singer's throat.
Yeah, it's literally in his throat. It's almost like his lungs.
And you can hear him like going like, So he's like, no, I'm never doing that. So it's like, it's like, and it made a lot of sense because if somebody bumps a mic stand like that, it's not going to do that. But it was just that direct shot. It was like,
I've seen it on stage. Seen some
on stage.
Some guy they were doing Regurgitator covers, and the mosh pit got a bit wild, and exactly that happened. Bumped the microphone. Didn't go in his mouth, but the noise it made clacking into his teeth. It's like it was over all the guitars and everything. Smack, like sucker punch straight in the gob.
Well, we'd had some, when I was at school and stuff. It's like you used to get I went to again, going back into being in Chico, which is where Sierra Nevada, it was a huge party school there. So I had this little band, and we used to play these big parties and stuff, and it was like that same thing. And the guitarist had some nice guitars, and he used to just get it into his fretboard. Somebody would kind of and man, that is gutting. It's just that sort of like nice fresh ding just from but man, that's you got off lightly, I'd say. that video is disturbing. You never look at life as the same again.
Microphone down the throat.
It's really got lodged in there, didn't it? Man. It's pretty disturbing.
Man, that is not good.
So,
sorry.
So you go first.
I was just going to ask because you mentioned the Bay Area earlier on, and I hear I don't know how old you were and what time you were growing up there. Obviously, being a bass player and bass player Primus from the Bay Area. Yeah. But there's another band, and I've loved this band, and no one's ever heard of them. But they were called the Blue Chunks. No, have you heard of them?
I don't know the Blue Chunks, but
they were apparently everyone says they were the band they were the band that should have got famous rather than the Chili Peppers. They were that sort of style. You know what I mean? They're amazing musos. But as much as I love the Chili's, don't get me wrong. But and I think I've saturated collecting everything that I can find about them. Yeah, but I'd love to know where those musos are now and what they're doing, because they were just an amazing band from that area.
Right, yeah, I have to say, I don't really know, because we kind of moved out of there, and much to kind of everyone's contention is the grass is always greener sort of thing. When you move away from a big city, it's hard not to think, me and my brother being little kids, it's kind of like, what the hell are we doing out here kind of thing. And I think my parents were thinking the same thing as because they're they like to be lively and have fun and do stuff. My dad was still a musician and all that, and it's just shit, we just moved out to the
what have we done to ourselves?
But we definitely kind of moved out a little too early to kind of be too influenced by any of that, because even now as sort of a hear that people like Joshua Redwood and that are from the Bay Area, wouldn't have known anything about that back then. But
it's mad, isn't it?
Yes, but it's
halfway point. Halfway point. Halfway point. It's the point that is halfway.
So give us a timeline of where you lived then, because I'm getting confused here.
I think we moved. The reason we moved back to California from Idaho was so that we could start school. I think my mom was not keen for us to start school in that kind of musician nightclub lifestyle sort of thing. And so we moved back. In the States you start kindergarten, which is sort of the equivalent of reception when you're 5, rather than over here you start reception when you're 4. So it's you essentially have a year later. Everything's a year out. So it was just before I started kindergarten that we moved back, and my dad kind of switched jobs to he's been a tile setter for many years. Well, really ever since I can really remember. So
good trade.
He kind of and actually, thinking back, I think part of the reason that they ended up in Idaho is because his father, my grandfather, was living there, and he was always a tile setter by trade. And I think part of the reason of going there was so my dad could kind of learn off him and do that. But then I think once they moved there, he instantly hooked up with his band, and it was but he must have actually learned from him how to do, because when we moved back to California, he got a job with a really good commercial tiling company, and basically sort of seemingly kind of overnight went from being a musician to being a construction worker, kind of, and and did that for years and years, and worked for a really, I think it was quite good company, and they did a lot of, they tiled restaurants before they were like, they commercial stuff. They didn't go to houses. They tiled restaurants and malls, and so he'd be there like just laying miles of tiling flooring in a mall or something, and
awesome. And
did that for years, and then that's when I started school. My brother's a couple years younger than me, and so we moved back to California just before I was 5, or just after I was 5, just before I was supposed to start school in September. So I guess I would have turned 5 in February, and sometime in that sort of 6-8 months we moved back, and then lived.
When's that now? 80 something?
So I was born in 84. It would have been. I was born in 79, kind of 84, sort of thing, and then we lived there from. I guess we must have moved to Northern California in like maybe 92.
And that was Reading.
Yeah.
What, so is it called? Listen, I'm sorry to say something.
No.
Reading. You call it Reading. When you lived over there, you call it Reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's with 2 D's.
Okay.
REDD.
As in Noel.
Because we've all
Noel
gone.
Reading, yes. Yeah.
We've all gone to Reading Festival. You carry on. You carry on. We've been to. He's still here.
What's he carrying?
I don't know. He's
I was getting the beer out. That's what he's doing.
He's going. I thought he was going in your cupboards.
Are we opening the clockwork?
It's up to you. It's up to you.
You're driving it.
I'm driving. I've got the nanny state, so I'm happy.
Well, I live here, so
I'm going beerless and fearless tonight.
Can I try a little bit? I haven't tried the what's it called?
The Pulp Patriot.
Yeah, go for that one.
Yeah.
I think, but not a lot, because it sounds like it's lethal.
I'm going to live vicariously through you guys tonight.
Have you got a half pint glass anywhere?
Yeah, hold on. Talk to
I'm just going to say, okay, I'm just going to chat. I'm going to keep this thing running here with these booze hounds.
I'm back.
No, I was just going to say, like, we go to Reading Festival over here, and the American bands come over and they go, Reading Festival. It always cracks me up. But then it's obviously spelled differently.
But actually, to be fair for that, and over the years, I've had to become a little bit pedantic about this, because being American and the difference in but actually, red and read is the same spelling, right? So it's actually completely justified that it's said.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I'm not having a go. I'm just sort of saying, it just cracks me up.
But it is weird. Yeah. So my Reading
was different spelling.
Was REDDING.
Thanks for the
and.
Do you want
the nanny state, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
in that glass?
Yeah, I'll have it in a glass. Thank you.
And
but now this is
yeah. So we.
And no, it's cool. It's amazing. I'm just I'm flummoxed. It's like my introduction to music was a £95 Strat
Check
copy.
Out just this little sidebar. Shout out to Brewdog. Look how full that is.
That is dangerously full.
I'm just gonna pour this into my glass over the counter. Over the sink.
No, and when did you start?
What, drinking beer?
No. Oh yeah, this is a beer podcast.
Like what?
I'm just watching
pink.
You guys.
No,
it's quite pink.
I don't remember that being like that.
It poured like tar.
Hold on. So what we're drinking? It looks like grapefruit juice. That's what it looks like.
This is it's called Pulp Patriot.
Ooh.
It's dangerous.
What's in it? What is it?
It's like a hazy double IPA kind of.
A hazy in case because he's away from the mic. A hazy double IPA.
Go on, give us it sound like. What's it sound like?
Dangerously tasty.
Is it like an Elvis
God, that's
juice?
really good.
It's like
So it says pulp. Does that mean it's like from?
I think this is the new kind of wave of some of these beers is this hazy thing.
Yeah.
And the pulp of the fruit is what makes it hazy or maybe or something like that. So it's like you have these.
When we're talking haze, we're talking cloudier. The classical
a
cider taint on beer.
I wouldn't ever claim to be an expert, but I think the slightly like something like Punk IPA or Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is more of a traditional ale IPA, kind of thing. And now these are like more like East Coast IPAs, which are like hazy and
bit of a step up,
pulpy. So I think the pulp is because you can't look at that. Looks like a smoothie, kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah, that looks like pink grapefruit juice from here.
It does.
I don't know if it's Aiden's fancy lighting, but
if you put this in a martini glass, that would be pretty funny, actually.
It's Sierra Nevada over in the States, you got there's millions of the boutique sort of places. There's one in Australia called Little Creatures, and they do and it's such a huge market, and you got people who are lager drinkers through and through, lager. And so what they've done is they've created this sort of mid to strong sort of strength.
Like 6 or 7?
No, like I'm talking like a mid strength over there is like a 3.5%.
Oh, okay.
That's a mid strength. So then you go and then your standard is 5.5 and all that sort of stuff. So they do like a 5 or a 4 point whatever, and it's called a Furphy, and it's brewed in Geelong in Melbourne, and it was like they're trying to introduce these lager drinkers to this sort of darker side, and it's. But it was actually quite a nice drop by itself. So,
well, obviously, these craft beer. We've had some conversations about lager.
Yeah, a lot
in the past, because I'm not a lager drinker at all, really, and that's one of the things that I hate about going on tour in Europe is all the fucking lager you have to drink. It's. But these craft beer places have been putting out this lager stuff.
Yeah.
That doesn't taste like lager. It's like it tastes like.
Well, Brewdog have got the Lost Lager.
Well, yeah, and actually, that's sort of you were winding me up about having a few of those in my fridge.
Yeah, you sent me a photo.
And my instant
have
reply.
Have you tried it though?
I have, yeah.
My reply was like, well, sometimes people come over.
Yeah.
But actually, I do find it's a decent beer. Like it doesn't taste like lager to me. It doesn't taste like Heineken.
What about Kingpin then?
The Kingpin I was less keen on, really. But
that's quite lagery, and that's more lager.
And that I think the problem with the Kingpin was that it was just like tasted like lager, but it was £5 a pint. I mean, back in the day, this hazy thing is kind of a new thing because they never had this. Sierra Nevada never made a hazy beer that I can remember back in the day, and this is like a new East Coast. There's all these great breweries in like Vermont and those that are making this kind of stuff.
I remember being in Philadelphia with Toupe, and we did this gig. I think it was called the Engine Room or Firehouse or something like this venue, and they had. I was a little bit tipsy, I'll be honest, and they had this pump.
It's probably the Firehouse, I would imagine.
Years and years. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was Magic Hat number 9, which is quite a common brew now. But I've never seen it before. This is done 15, 17 years ago, maybe even. But oh man, yeah, I had a few of those, and it was great. And it was different, and it was not a lager. And it was, it was a pale ale. And then they called it not quite pale ale. I remember that.
Right. Yeah.
Delicious.
I remember that around here, because when I was actually kind of a little bit burnt out, but by the time in Chico, you used to be able to. There was. I mean, they had, like I said, it was a party town, and the drink specials and all the bars were just ridiculous. And there was this one bar that we used to play in all the time, and they had this progressive pitcher night, right? So a pitcher of beer is 4 pints, but the pints in the US are a little bit smaller. I think these are 16 ounce and our pints are 12 ounce or something like that. But so you have 4 12-ounce pints of pale ale for $2. It was
God,
so it was like $2 from 8 till 8:30, and then at 8:30 it went up to $2.50. And then at 9, if you were to go to a place in San Francisco, it'd probably cost you $10 to get that or something.
That's me sleeping in someone's garden.
Well, I mean, it's just I think I came away from it, and when I came to England, and I do appreciate the English ales. I've just had a proper job, was it? And it was that's a nice, I wouldn't ever normally choose that for myself, but it's a nice sort of thing. But it wasn't really something that I could get. Having grown up on Sierra Nevada, I couldn't really kind of do that. And so when I came here, I started drinking Guinness because in the States.
When did you come here?
2005.
2005, okay. In
the States, kind of Guinness is a top shelf tap beer. You're paying more than
I was going to mention
than your normal. But over here it's kind of around the same. So it's and I was kind of a little burnt out on the ale, but they didn't have Sierra Nevada or all that over here, and I wasn't really gonna get on board with the cask ales and stuff. So it's and then I'll never forget. It was in a pub in Eastleigh. There's a place called the Cricketers. Do you know that? It's just kind of near to the Concord Club and Barton Peveril in there and all that sort of. There's a pub called they've had Punk IPA on tap there for years.
Yeah. Really?
And it was I went in there after a gig or something, and I was oh, I'll try that, and it was I was just loving it. And at the time I hadn't twigged that it was actually quite similar to Sierra, but it was that was the start of the revival of and this would have been years ago, and I didn't even really know, but I was just I really like this beer, it's great. And I didn't go there hardly ever because it's really not near anything that I would be at, but and that was kind of, and now it's kind of everywhere. And,
it is, as in bloody Wetherspoons.
Yeah, and actually Wetherspoons is one of the greatest places to get it because it's affordable.
Exactly. That's it. I remember my dad coming over to Australia where my brother lived in Perthside, and we went to Little Creatures Brewery, which is a boutique brewery over there. Well, it was. Now it's kind of gone a bit brewdog massiveness, which is cool if it tastes good. And he goes, on my first round, and there's 7 of us there, and he bought 7 pints, and it came to, I think it was 55 quid.
Yeah.
And I think he handed over $70, which was or $78, which was 55 quid at the time.
Yeah.
And he was just have I been ripped off? He was trying to be polite, but ask me, I've just paid 55 quid for 7 pints. Bearing in mind, he goes to a British Legion where it's probably £1.78 for a pint, you know what I mean? He's used to that.
I mean, I have to say,
shocking. No one drinks out
it is unfortunately expensive, I think, to drink this stuff, and it's in some ways, from a business perspective, I can see it's a bit clever how they've done it, because they've kind of it's just totally the way that they've marketed it and presented it and everything, and it's just but man, it is annoying, but actually part of that thing is that I grew up drinking $2 pints, $2 pitchers.
My favourite drink was your sort of bread and butter drink.
And even when we were at school there, and when we used to go to the Bay Area to see a show or something, we'd just be appalled at how ridiculously expensive a pint of pale ale was in San Francisco. But even then, it was still probably only $5, which was But yeah, man, they've really nailed the whole. The
microbrewery thing is awesome. Yeah.
Well, and now in the States, and it's probably starting to come over here, but it's they've got this whole elusive beer thing where there's these beers that have these incredibly high ratings, but you can only get them from the brewery, and the brewery's in some crazy remote place and some crazy it's you gotta drive 2 days to get to it, and it's but people do it, and there's lines out the door, and just and actually the beer is amazing, there's something to, but they've really kind of got that whole marketing elusive thing, and supply and demand.
It's a
I guess
niche.
it is.
It's a niche market, isn't it? It's people who like something a little bit more, like quality over quantity, possibly.
Yeah.
And
when it first came over here, this whole kind of craft brew thing, and when I first started seeing Sierra Nevadas in the big Sainsbury's and stuff, I was like, oh, this is great, and I was like paying more for one bottle than I would have paid for a 6-pack, and but I was like, if I buy it now, then it'll drive the price down. But it's like now, even when you go back to the States, that shit's expensive and it's crazy.
Well, I remember buying the tallies, whatever you call them in this country, tall bottles of IPA, the Punk IPA.
Yeah.
In Australia, I think I was paying like $12 a bottle over there. Like back when they first
what's that in real money?
I don't know currently, but what's the Australian dollar at the minute? It's probably like £8 or £9 probably.
Yeah.
But it was,
similar kind of thing, yeah.
But it was better than, like a Carlton Draft or Victoria Bitter, which is the standards over there. And it's like, you just need a bit of something different sometimes.
Well, I used to be able to, I was, because I moved over here and everything, and it used to be like, if I splashed out a bit on 3 bottles of pale ale, they'd probably cost 20 quid or something.
Yeah, that's it.
It's just a bit of home, you can justify it for that, but it's like, but that it has gone down actually. To be fair, because it's like that stuff, the BrewDog Punk IPA and the pale ale, and some of there's another good California brewery, the Lagunitas. You see that over here.
Yeah,
and that's
nice,
they make a good beer, and that stuff is kind of becoming a little bit more of the standard brew stuff, and it's not as expensive, or you can get it sort of 3 for $5 or something like that, or but man, that Beavertown stuff is expensive.
It's good though, isn't it? That's only in London. That's not even.
No, you can get it at Waitrose, but you're gonna
it's good stuff.
Do they do
£3 a can or something.
Is that the same boys who do neck oil?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, good.
Yeah, we have it in Byron Bergen. Do you remember? Before we have a gig, we all have one of
neck
those.
oil in there. They've got the Gamma Ray on tap at the brew house and kitchen. It's always on tap there. The Gamma Ray.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That's random.
Really
I flew to Cyprus. I can't even remember.
That is random.
It's random. I know, but just change the subject. Change the subject completely. But I flew to Cyprus and asked for a beer on the plane, and that's what they gave me.
A Beavertown Gamma Ray.
They gave me a Gamma Ray. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
I'll go on that flight.
I was like, and it was not a fancy dancer flight or anything. It was just a sort of standard, sort of up and down, sort of airplane. Go, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, bloody hell, pushing the boat out. It's nice.
It does turn up. I mean, I love when I got that growler bottle. I was doing a couple of days. I was very fortunate to spend like a good year playing with this saxophone player, Gilad Atzman. And we did all kinds of pretty cool gigs. Well, I mean, every gig that I did with him was cool in some way. But we played all these kind of, as they call them, like provincial jazz clubs, where it was like, but then we played all of the cool London venues. Did the 606 with him a few times, and the Hideaway, Ronnie Scott's, and this particular time it was the Vortex. He was doing 2 nights of the Vortex, and he asked me to play, and it was like great. I got a cheap little Airbnb around there, and it's like you're just doing the gigs. There's no rehearsals or nothing. It's all just by this point we were kind of in the mode, and so I was like, I'd kind of done a little research, and it was like up in that north part. It was like to get up to Tottenham Hale. It was pretty easy, and it was the gigs were Friday and Saturday, and that tap room's only open on a Saturday, so it was like great. So I travelled up on the Friday, got in my Airbnb, went and did the gig, and then on the Saturday afternoon I just went up and checked out the brewery, and it was just amazing. It wasn't amazing in like going to see like something amazing.
Marillion. Was it as amazing as Marillion?
Well, it was as amazing as going to a warehouse where they produce really nice beer.
No, that's fair.
They had like a food truck outside, and they had all these like kind of like exclusive things on tap, and like all of the fridge, the cans in the fridge were super cheap, and it's like, and so I just like kind of splurged out and got a bunch of beers, and I got this growler full of stuff, and it was just a cool sort of experience. And I wasn't actually really drinking when I was there because I had the gig that night, and it's like I'm not like a teetotaler before a gig, but I'm also not gonna like turn up to it, especially like an important gig, like having had like 4 or 5 pints already. You know, it's like I had a couple of halves or something, and then got all and it was just a really cool thing to kind of go visit, and I got that growler which I still use to fill up at different places, and it's a really cool place and cool brewery.
Yeah,
and they make some great beer.
You should go to the Brewdog one.
Up in Scotland.
You've been. I see all the photos.
Aberdeenshire has quickly become one of my favourite places. It is amazing around there.
Yeah, you had a cracker of a weekend. Was it a weekend?
Yeah, Kelly and I went. You can fly. We flew there from London. It's like an hour and a half, and then you hire a car. And it's a half-hour drive. So like we left here at 6 in the morning. We were in Brewdog by 11:30.
That's brilliant.
It's amazing.
Well, literally, they opened 11:30 in the morning, smashing them down.
Well, you're only there once, aren't you?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's what it is.
I love it though. I love the brew houses, whatever, because there's Little Creatures, the Australian version of Brewdog. I'm going to say they have one in Melbourne where they make some beers, and most of it's made on the West Coast. But in Melbourne, it's great. It's like we call it the Eat House, whatever it's called, and they have on a random evening. It's called Brewer's Shout, and the brewer is trying to do something new, so he brings in 3 to 5 kegs, and it's free. And you just randomly sat there, bang, and you bring in 5 kegs, and it's free beer for the rest of the night, as long as you're tasting that stuff, obviously. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was crazy. That's crazy. But
well, he's got more beer out. Here we go. I can see how this podcast is going.
It's empty.
I'm sipping on my nanny state. I'm happy.
Which one's this then? This is the same one.
Yeah. Once you open it, you can't really, these things are kind of like once you crack them, you kind of got to get rid of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be drank in the same day necessarily, but you don't want to like let that go on for a couple of days because it's like it's just a bottle of carbonated. It's like a Coke. It's like a bottle of Coke.
It's common courtesy just to empty it, isn't it?
We'll leave it over here so I don't have to travel as far.
But no, it's a music and. Oh man, music, beer, and substances are entwined, sadly.
Well, we've always been. My wife and I are. We've over the years, and we sort of sometimes now that we have a couple of kids, and we kind of are feeling sort of properly, slightly reluctantly, but properly kind of settled down. We sort of often think back to our sort of adventures, and one way or another, we've been on a fair amount of like. Alcohol tours, and we're not booze hounds or anything. I mean, but it's like we met on the ships, and we been on a couple of these. Like we went on a couple of like Argentinian wine tours. It's like when you're on the ship, it's like you're just kind of trying to find stuff to do, and especially like the problem with sometimes being on a cruise is that you go to the same places all the time for like if you're on a certain route. Are you
holidaying on a cruise?
No,
are you working on a cruise? You're working,
yeah. So
musically, or
when I left university in 2002, I took a job on the cruise ship, just to kind of like, well, partly to kind of get a job and partly to kind of prove to my parents that like my music degree was worthwhile. And, not that they really were like, but
was there any pressure there from your parents?
No, I don't think so. I mean, my parents have never really applied any pressure for much really. They're not really that way, but it was just I guess it was more for me to just say that like we're gonna do this, and like, and
I'm just thinking how alien
I've got a job.
Musical pressure from a parent would be. Do you know what I mean? It's a complete alien concept for me.
Like they were always kind of very supportive, but my dad especially was always a little bit reluctant of me being a musician because it's a hard thing, as we all know. It's not an easy thing. There's some great joys and there's some quite difficult things, and I think I've been really lucky, but So anyway, yeah, I went on the ship right out of school. I think I graduated in June, and I went on the ship in October or something, and I hated it instantly. I hated everything about it. I just like I'm not like, and this is where like now it's quite funny because my wife and I now have these like little. Well, we don't have arguments, but she gets annoyed with me when somebody asked how we met and the ship thing comes up, and I start going, I fucking hated it. I hated every second of it. I hated every, and she's like sitting over here going like, well,
actually, I was there with you.
I wish I never went.
Yeah,
but nothing good came of that.
I did like musically. That's the way I should justify it, is like, because I actually like in experience wise, and I'm very, very lucky and grateful to have met my wife on the ships, and it's been an amazing thing, and that's what brought me to Great Britain, and we've got two amazing, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Very, it's
that's cool.
And I can very much see why she gets annoyed when I am so damning about the ships, because that was very much our origins, and we actually had some really great times, really unique and special times on the ships that were totally social. And for example, when I got the job on the ship, I found out I got this job in around about September or something, and I was talking to my grandmother, who I was sort of staying with for a little while before, and we had this really surreal conversation about how I'd got a job on a cruise ship in South America, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going on a cruise in South America," and it was and then it's obviously you can see where this is going. It's it happened to be that just completely randomly that the ship that I had got assigned to was the same ship that my grandmother was going on a post New Year's cruise, so they were coming from the 3rd of January for 2 weeks, and I was boarding at the beginning of October, and it was just this kind of crazy. It was weirdly one of the things that kind of kept me hanging on, because it was I could kind of see.
Why did you hate it so much?
It's just that goes back to the musically it was really, really unfulfilling, and this is where.
In what respect? In respects where you were playing what was put in front of you chart wise?
No, it's sort of not that. It was just maybe it was just a little bit too much of a dive for the deep end, into the deep end for me, where it was I would always just been playing. I'd always been taking the gigs and knowing what to expect and play. And and I always say, even to this day, it's you do some great gigs, some amazing gigs that you'll say, I'll happily do that gig for no money. And then other gigs where you think, it's going to cost you $300, sort of thing. Yeah, and something like that. And it's but that's fine. You know what you're going to get. But then the other thing is that even if you do a really crappy gig or a run of really crappy gigs, you always know that you can when you got a day off, you can do your own gig, or you can go to a jam, or it's the ship was so confining, and it was just such a variety of just the ship shows that were there was singers and dancers, and it was kind of this really hack Vegas kind of thing. We played all to track, all the drums, every single thing that I hit, which was written out. Every single thing was on a track as well.
Oh right,
so it's
doubling. Doubling the track.
Yeah, so it's well, why and I had because I'm a little bit ornery when it comes to these. It's well, what am I doing? Why am I here? It's we can't, it's and then it just
so
from there.
You weren't miming, you were still playing.
No,
you were still hitting
still
out.
Playing. It's they mix the acoustic sound, and
that's bizarre.
And the track obviously has tons of extra shit on it. So there's tons of percussion and strings, and we were a 6-piece band. There was trumpet, trombone, saxophone, piano, bass, and drums, and you're playing this Broadway kind of shit with it. It's so that was the first thing, and then it's and then you back up all these guest entertainers, as they called, and they're all fucking assholes because they're all like that. I mean, some of them were that's unfair. Like that's not true. That's not true at all. And I'm not just saying that.
I can sense you boiling as you're talking about the ship.
This is where like now I'm going to get myself into a little bit of trouble because actually because Sam, my wife, was she was a guest entertainer, and that's how we met.
Right.
But she there was like. It is like genuinely completely unfair for me to say that they were all assholes, because that's not the case. There was like, I'd say 20% of them like really switched on, really knew what they were doing, and like all of us who have encountered different kinds of musicians, like it was like, okay, I can work with this person, it's cool, we're gonna do this. But there was like a huge proportion of them who were like basically there's like a couple of thousand people on a ship, more now, the ships are bigger, and it's like once they play their show, they're like a celebrity on the ship, and they would go from ship to ship to ship, and it's like they couldn't get a gig on land or anything, but it's like in that ship world they were celebrities, and they very much presented themselves in that way, and that was not endearing, and it was not musically good, it was not personally good, and it was just fucking annoying, to be honest. So it's like you had these like violin players and these crooners and things who just thought they were the fucking God's gift to, and it was annoying to play with them because they were only just average, and they would obviously come with these like makeshift charts and stuff like that, and it was just a slog. Musically it was a slog. There was no real reward ever. There was no like do your crap gig and then go out after and meet up with your friends and have a jam session, or even
trapped.
And that was like and so it was like you would meet, and it was really, when it happened, it was really refreshing. But it was like so Sam, my wife, she had a really unique, interesting show. It was all she's a classical pianist, and it was all centered around piano, like popular classical things mixed with movie themes, and a bit of jazzy stuff in there, but all quite scripted. But it was a really unique show. But more importantly, she presented herself in a way to the musicians where it was like, we're working together here. We need to, she wasn't pretentious in that way. She was another one of us, another musician who just wanted the show to go good, and she talked to us in musical terms and wasn't condescending. And so it was like, and there was a few people like that you would, and they were a pleasure to work with, and it was great, but like by and large you just got these like small pond celebrity kind of things, and it was just hard work, and like I said, it's like we all do those gigs on land all the time, but you have you can do something else, and it was like completely cooped up on the ship, and just a weird experience of musically. It was a very weird experience. I found it.
You've done it. Mm-hmm. How similar experience? Or?
Yeah, very much. We called them fly-ons. So. Did you call them fly-ons? That's what we called them. Because then we met them in Acapulco or somewhere, and they flew in and they got on the ship, and then they did their one night, and then they got off the ship in the next port, and then well, I think looking back, I probably, because my first cruise was in South America, and so it was like, because it's a little bit remote and a little bit less, let's say, maybe developed or something, there was no really flying in and flying out like you can do in the Caribbean and that sort of. So it's like, when you're that close, like if I still say to this day, and it would have probably changed my life, like if I was doing a cruise in like Alaska, I would have gotten off after a month, way before I like met my wife or hooked up with my grandmother or anything. I wouldn't have stayed there because it was just like, I'm very happy to get stuck in musically and to play songs that aren't my favorite songs and to kind of toe the line and do the thing. But this was just like too much. It was just day after day of just it was hard work, and like I said, it was a total musical thing that had just a sliver of sunlight when
when somebody would come up that was reasonable and that was cool. Another interesting experience is that we for only 2 weeks, and this was the other thing, is that you would get these certain entertainers on for months. You'd have their show twice a week for like 3 months, and it was like, man, if they were an asshole, jeez, man. It was like, but one time for like, I think it was like 4 weeks or maybe even less. It's like Cecil Welch. I still remember his name. It was like, I can't really find much but he was a trumpet player, one of Henry Mancini's trumpet players, and he played on all of the, like, a lot of those old movie scores, and he was just a lovely guy, and he was an amazing player, and he had all these like original Mancini charts, and we did some, and it was just an amazing experience. And that was one of there's 2 or 3 like really special musical experiences I had, despite all of that was one of them, like playing with that guy, and just he was just a great guy, had great arrangements, obviously great tunes and stuff, and the other one was going to Brazil, and this was like a completely off the ship thing. It was like we met this was when I'd met Sam at this point, and we were hanging out a lot together and going around, and we went to Brazil, and we had these 2 like long weekends in Rio de Janeiro, and we met this cab driver and kind of like gave him a bunch of money and said, can you just look after us for the weekend, kind of thing. And he did, and he was there outside the ship every day, but he took us to this little like club, little bossa nova club at one point, where there was like actual, like something you would only see in a movie, like actual like Brazilian musicians playing Joe Beam tunes and shit. And I'll never forget it. There was like a woman there singing Joe Beam tunes in English, like really kind of badly, but like in a, it was like she sang them beautifully in Portuguese, but then would like British or American people do, like sort of suffer through the Portuguese over here. Like she was kind of suffering through the English, and they let me sit in and stuff, and they were really, and it was an amazing like musical kind of experience to kind of go be involved with that, and like in Rio and playing like bossa music and with those like, and so it was like there was a very few, sort of really, that's kind of like, even internally I'm a little bit torn about the whole ship thing, because like I just hated 80% of it. It just didn't suit me, the whole situation. But I did have some very, very life-changing experiences there, and
that's a tough one, isn't it? It's like taking the good with the bad, and the bad with the good.
It's just like, I wouldn't be
what's
here.
The ratio? And
we wouldn't be talking right now if I hadn't been on that ship, and I really faithfully believe a lot of my life now is been determined because of that. But I just didn't get on with it that well, generally. But hey, it's a crazy thing.
So we've been going for nearly an hour and a half.
Wow.
We're trying to keep these to an hour and a half.
I think we talked about 50 minutes.
We haven't talked about anything musically. We talk about beer.
Well, we haven't played any of your stuff yet. You sent me a whole list.
No, actually, yeah.
I want to play some of your stuff.
What have you mentioned so far?
The Baker Brothers.
Let's get some of that, because
I think it's got to be Baker Brothers, isn't it?
I'm curious as.
Right, but Ted, you're gonna have to help me out here, because what am I gonna put on?
Well, I don't know. I mean, do we want sort of early, middle, or late in terms of my
stuff
tenure?
stuff with good drummings?
Well, I'd like to think that it's all got good. Oh man, I don't know.
So you sent me like a Spotify playlist.
Yeah,
so have a look at that.
I guess that's where we.
All right. What's your big hit?
Well,
what's the one with the most listens?
I don't even know what that might be, but let's in the mood that seeing that Spotify list. Let's
what pops out? I
love this tune, Big Guns, and there's a little bit of an interesting story behind it. So Chris Pedley, who's an amazing musician, who's the leader really and the driving force behind the Baker Brothers. He was like, the Baker Brothers used to be two brothers and Chris, one of Rich Baker, brilliant drummer and singer, and Dan Baker, an amazing multi-instrumentalist, singer, all sorts, and then Chris Pedley. They all played all sorts of stuff, and so, but it was kind of like Chris played the bass, Dan played keys and guitar, Rich played drums, they all sang. But really, Chris plays bass and guitar, Dan plays guitar and keys and bass and violin, and Rich is actually a good bassist. They're all sort of super, like, really good all-arounders. And they kind of started as this little kind of brilliant, quirky trio, and then kind of over the years expanded into a kind of a soul outfit sort of thing. And anyway, so Chris Pedley got it separate from the Baker Brothers, got commissioned to write the music for the trailer for Django Unchained, the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Wow, that's a big film.
Yeah, so they and that, like, part of their, as I understand it, part of their remit was to like kind of work in some James Brown, like a little bit of a sample of a James Brown thing. And so they wrote this little tune, him and a business partner of his, this guy Kieran Garrett, who's actually produced some of our stuff and is a brilliant producer and just guy, musician, sort of all around kind of cool thing. And anyway, so they did this tune. It was like a 30-second thing, and it was kind of like he used a sample, one of the Baker Brothers sample packs, which is another sort of thing that was like before my time. So it was one of Rich's really cool drum sample, and then they kind of wrote this like slightly westerny sort of like tune, funky western kind of tune thing. And then Chris got the other guys, like Scott plays some trumpet on it, Paul plays some sax, Jeff plays some guitar, and then they did a little instrumental track for the trailer. That is part of the trailer. If you look up the trailer on YouTube, that's what it is. And then he wanted to make it into a full-length tune, which he did. They wrote whole lyrics to the whole thing, and it was a great tune, and I always loved it. But there was a little part of me where it's like, it's got that drum sample.
Yeah,
it's not me playing drums on it.
That's not me, man.
That went on to but it was so cool. It went on to our second album. It was a really cool little thing, and then this version is so then we played it live all the time. It was one of our like favorite tunes to play live. And then in the last live album we did, which was just in 2017, it was on there, and that, so it was like finally a kind of a version with me playing the drums on it. And it's just like, it's just a great tune. Chris is a great songwriter, and you know, it's just a really kind of, I love all, like, I come from Northern California, as we've said, so it's like I played a lot of country music, and that whole like being in the West and the whole cowboy kind of slight gangstery sort of like rogue thing, and it's like this tune just has everything in it, and it's a cool tune, and it was a great, I mean, Jeff's a great singer. There's some great vibes on it, so I love this.
Okay.
So this is from,
what's it called?
This is called Big Guns. It's from our very most recent live album, which is just called Baker Brothers Live.
Where was it recorded?
It was recorded at the 1865.
Oh, I know it well.
Southampton,
I know it well.
And so you got Jeff Lye on the vocals and guitar, Scott Bayliss plays keyboards and trumpet, Paul Young on the saxophone, myself on drums, and Chris Pedley on the bass. And we had Vanessa Freeman was our featured vocalist for this set, but I don't think she sings on this one, but yeah.
Okay, here we go. Drag it.
run or climb. Well, it's about how high, right above the snakes below. California Carter could be waiting for you from the day you're born to the day you're done. You've been busting rocks just to make the corn. I'm pulling out the big gun, got nicks in the hole. Pulling out the mad gun, got nicks in the hole. So listen closely, brothers and sisters. Life's too short and full of blisters. Payback time, now your face is in the dirt. Grinning like a weasel in a hen house. I got a $10 Stetson on a 5-cent head. Laughing like a jackass, chewing on cactus. Well, I'm a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. From the day you were born to the day you're done. Retribution on your heels, you got hell to come. I'm pulling out the big gun, got nicks in the hole. Pulling out the mad gun, got nicks in the hole. So listen closely, brothers and sisters. Life's too short and full of blisters. Payback time, now your face is in the dirt. It's better to be a has-been than a never was. Better to be a has-been than a never was. Well, I'm pulling out a big gun, got nicks in the hole. I'm pulling out a mad gun, got nicks in the hole. I'm pulling out a big gun, got nicks in the hole. I'm pulling out a mad gun. Oh, listen closely, brothers and sisters. Life's too short and full of blisters. Payback time, now your face is in the dirt. Thank you very much.
No, that's cool. that is exactly
funky shit.
That's yeah. No, that's my. I'm working in London tomorrow, so that's exactly what I'm going to be listening to on the way there.
I mean, I have to say, like, it's not the, there's a few tunes that I'm maybe more connected to, or maybe had more of a involved drum parts. I mean, over the years, I've been very fortunate to be a member of the Baker Brothers since 2011, and over the years, there's just been some really great music that we've made, and all kind of, I feel like all kind of areas where it's like some sort of technically tricky stuff, some really funky stuff, some bluesy stuff. So, everybody's like has a different little bit of a different background, and there's a lot of stuff I'm really, really proud of from that band. Well, I mean, I genuinely say I'm proud of everything, but there's a lot, but that's just such a fun.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is it all upbeat and fun like that?
It's just gritty, and I love that. There's Chris. Everybody has such a unique way of presenting themselves and their music, and it's like there's a line in there. It's like, I'm a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. It's just some cool stuff. Like we just love playing that. That's one over the years. It's like where we've had, as bands do, you have different albums and your set changes and according to that, and that's kind of been a staple, and it's great fun. We just love playing fun. It.
A smash out. Yeah, I like that. Not that lot.
So you can check it out on the one of the Django Unchained, and actually it was a bit of a kind of a, I think they got sort of not in a negative way. I don't think that there was anything but they did their little bit for the trailer, and that was their remit kind of thing, and then Chris was they were trying to pitch for the whole tune to be on the, like they did this. There's an album version of this on Hear No Evil, which was a couple of albums before this.
We called our album Hear No Evil.
We did, yeah.
I think you did it first.
It's a good name. It's a good name. And they were trying to, but the powers that be took the trailer bit, which they owned, or whatever, and put a Tupac rap over it. So there's like a Tupac and James Brown on the actual soundtrack. There's like kind of that. There's parts of that thing with Tupac and postmodern Tupac and James Brown and that kind of sound bed, and that's what they went for. And then but then they also wouldn't, like, apparently James Brown's like estate won't let you use anything even if you use a little snippet. So we had to change a few bits to be able to make it our own for our own album sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what a tune! I mean,
that's great. The horns crank up, and that's just it's just an instant smile. Great feeling.
Yeah,
I've never been lucky enough playing a band with a horn section on stage, and it just must be something else.
Well, I mean, this I have to say that this horn section is really. I mean, Paul Young, who's a local saxophone player, and I mean, he is just a force of nature. That's the only thing. I mean, I went to see him. I've worked with Paul a lot over the years in a lot of different things. Paul's been to America with me. He's one of Paul's the godfather to my son. He's one of the first musicians I met, and he's just an amazing person, just a really cool guy. And we've worked together in so many different situations, from being on really crappy pub gigs to being on lucrative but crappy functions, to being on tour in Italy with the Baker Brothers, to being on tour in Japan with the Baker Brothers. He's been to California with me playing, and he is just I went to see him the other week, actually just about 2 weeks ago. I had a little bit of a kind of a night off sort of thing, and he was like, I phoned him. I was like, what are you up to? You want to come around for a beer and just hang out? I haven't seen you for a while. And he was like, oh, I've got a gig.
Of course it was a beer.
Yeah, well, yeah. He was like, I've got a gig at the Platform Tavern with some guys. It's just a little bit of a... And I was like, oh, come down, I was like, and I was just watching them play. And it was a good band. And I was just like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks after knowing this guy for about 20 years. It's like, he's just always the best guy in every band that he's in. He's one of those guys. It's like, he's the best soloist in every band that he's in, no matter what. Like, that's kind of the thing. He's just like, so yeah, him and Scott Bayliss is our trumpet player. He plays keys as well, and it's like it's only two of them, and it's just it's amazing. Yeah, they're full on.
It's like the whole volume. It's that volume thing. I always remember. I mentioned the Cat Empire again, but they come out and they do this thing, and it's like a Latin bull fight sort of.
Yeah.
The sheer volume of the horn is like when you're right in front of the stage.
Yeah.
Almost in front of the PA, it's still like.
Well, that's it,
and it's just awesome.
It's funny you say that. We have a tune that we do called The Mexican.
All right.
Which is I think it's originally by a obscure band called Babe Ruth. But it's a funk tune that's based on a Marconi line, and it starts off with that bullfight kind of thing, and it's just like, man, that's it brings the house down. That's the rolling in the deep of our shows. It's sort of it's crazy.
Yeah, it's great. Great.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Well.
Thank you for the beer. Thank you for the beer.
Anytime.
Yeah, not that I'm gutted or anything.
No. Next time
down the line. Yeah.
Don't be getting yourself.
We'll do it at your house next time.
No, it's good to have a break from every now and again, isn't it?
It is. It's good for the waistline.
It's good for that's it. Yeah, I'm feeling that. Yeah, I just if I can't have a beer, I have a half a Madeira cake.
Right.
So
maybe
it's not so good for the waistline.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
In our intro song, what were you playing? What was that?
Well, this is without sort of trying to go through another little wormhole, but one of the really unique, brilliant experiences I've had as playing with the Baker Brothers is that we made a couple of loop packs. So there's,
I think the stems from your songs.
No. We went in specifically to a studio and recorded, just pissed around essentially to a click track. And there's actually 4 Baker Brothers volumes of loop packs. The first 2 was before my time, and the second 2 were when I was in the band. And then actually the same kind of guys, it was this guy Kieran Bailey actually who helped us work on the Big Guns thing and did the Quentin Tarantino thing with Chris, and he asked, I've done just a drum one that's called Revenge of the Funky Drummer. So there's like 2 Baker Brothers loop packs that I'm on, and this Revenge of the Funky Drummer. But so anyway, I started getting these. It's a pretty good little thing, and you get a little statement every quarter of your earnings from it. And I started getting this. And it usually would just say loop pack 1, loop pack 2, Revenge of the Funky Drummer, what you earn from each one. And then about a year and a half ago, there was like another line that was something I didn't understand, but it had money in it. It was like and I so I called Kieran. I was like, "What's this? What is this?" And he said about this Launchpad. So there's this app called Launchpad that you can get, like, sort of layouts for or something, and somebody who had made a retro funk layout, or I think this one's called a funk hop. So it's like we've always had that like retro funk kind of slightly hip hoppy kind of whatever, it's like groove, and so whoever people like kind of make these little layouts, and somebody had used a couple of our samples in them, and that's what kind of prompted me to kind of use this. Was just like there's a couple of the bass, so in these sample packs, I think generally they have 3 or 4 tempos, and there's tons of bass riffs, and it's labeled with what key it's in, and they all have a name. And we always say it's like when we're editing these things down, the hardest part of it is giving every sample a name. To be like 100 beats a minute, and there's 20 bass loops. And 5 of them will be in C, 5 of them will be in B flat, and a bunch of them will be in G, and whatever it is, and then there's keys loops, there's sax loops, there's trumpet loops, so it's like you could it's kind of like it's sort of funny because whenever we've done these things, the guy Kieran, he has to make like a promo for the pack. And it's like shit. He's like all this shit that we just played randomly, and it's like he's pieced together and like made like a song and a video. It's like there's the one for that. I'm still like kind of like the one that he did for the Funky Drummer is like it's pretty mad, It's like, and he used because the one that I did, the Funky Drummer one, was just drums. So he used all these other loop packs to make the demo, and it was like some of it was like almost like EDM-y or something, and some of it was funky, some of it was the Baker Brothers loops that he used and it's just mad the way that what you can potentially do with these things, and it's great. Like it's these things if it's you
instant access for
it sort of is, but it's like you still gotta you still got to do something with it, but it does provide, like, if you're somebody who's got loads of ideas but just can't play a drum beat, and actually the idea that he had with the Funky Drummer thing that I did was that we did the same loops on 3 different drum kits. So I had like a big drum kit, which is like I say big, it's not that big, but it's like a 22-inch bass drum and a kind of full on, and then we had a medium, like a 20-inch bass drum with the smaller toms, and then we had like a proper like a little Questlove like a 16-inch
cocktail kit, whatever,
So it's like, and he was like, sometimes the problems that people have with these is that they like a beat but they don't like the sound of it, sort of thing. So it's like, but yeah, so that's where this this opening jam came from. That it was because I got this. After I saw that thing on my like statement, I was like, interesting. So I went and instantly downloaded the app and bought my own thing.
I just went out and paid myself.
Like, and then it's like, and then like as it goes again, it's like all this modern like electronic stuff. They never want the real drums. So it's like, so everything on here, it is brilliant actually, but everything on here is all programmed drums, but with like loads of Chris's bass loops and Jeff's guitar loops and like some horn loops or whatever it is, and but it still sounds pretty good. So it's like you can press, as long as you press it in time, you click these squares, and whenever you click them, it waits 4 beats and then comes in, sort of thing. So it's like, it's pretty bad actually, because you could, like we were saying before, it's like and then there's all kinds of ways you can manipulate it by making those DJ sounds or these crash sounds,
the stuttering sound and all that.
So that's what, I thought like that was my instrument that I brought, was the launch pad of,
give us another loop.
Come on, fire
so I'm gonna go straight in with what I think. I think that wasn't. I'll put it on the mic. I'm gonna go straight in with what I think is Chris's bass loop and see if that goes in.
Here we go.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's his. That's special. So that's a sound effect right there. We're bringing a programmed drum loop. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bit sparse, so it's a bit of a lottery here.
That's right.
1, 2,
I like the randomness of it, the chaos.
I think we can find a Jeff. There's a Jeff one on here. Let me see if I can press the right one. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Scott. That's a key. That's another key. That's another one of the keys loops. Yeah. Where's the guitar one? Let me see.
Love it. You've just...
There he is.
Have you just pushed them all? You've just pushed them all.
It's just like, it's like a Jenga kind of thing, but it's like...
That's great.
Like we were saying before, it's like on the train. This is great.
Set of headphones on that.
You feel like David Guetta.
2 hours, 2 hours is gone. Your eyes are closed, there's 40,000 people in front of you. Oh yeah.
Alright, so...
Magic.
It's time for our outro song.
Oh lordy.
So what
feeling inspired?
What kind of vibe do you want?
What have you got?
What have we got? What should we sing? Are you going to sing?
No.
We've got some. We have some hip hop vocal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can try that. You got some?
Bring the fire, light the match. Burn the roof down, no tricks, no catch. Please check the sound, profound, energetic. Just leave it to the professional dance floor, athletic.
Loud and proud. Rhyme.
You can do like.
Go on. That was nice.
I wish we had a webcam on this bit. The smile on his face is priceless.
You do all this stuff to your like.
Oh, the bass.
Oh, there's Jeff. There's Jeff.
Nice lick.
That's unmistakable.
Oh, that's so slick. That's a nice lick. It's so slick. That's a nice lick.
I'm trying to be a rapper, but it's not working. Oh, it's gone all bit trancey now. I like that. Okay, take it home with some big drums.
There they are.